are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
Welcome everybody. A bit of a somber note. We're going to start the show with USF's men's basketball coach Abdul Rahim. He passed away from a procedure unexpectedly at the age of 43 the other day, and I just wanted to take the time to talk about him and what he meant to the school, to the community of the Tampa Bay community, and to the basketball community, and how highly respected he was, how much joy he brought to everybody regarding this team, and basketball and the excitement. And it was short-lived. It was only a year, one season with him, but I've never felt the excitement level that I felt for this team. I mean, I even noticed out here in Long Beach, someone had come up to me. I was wearing a USF shirt, and he was asking me about the basketball team. I mean, that's how much of an effect he had. That he had an effect 2,500 miles away from where he was, and it really is amazing what he did with that program in 1 year's time. They were doing nothing for a long time, and then raised the bar so much. And it's I don't know, words can't describe. I was very caught off guard by it. I had no idea he had issues, and he was such a energetic and respectful guy. And I'm very very heart-stricken and very very tough to process all this. But Ian, you've been on campus. How are you processing all this?
So for me, it's definitely a shock because, for context, I would see where my classrooms are. I have to park in the Sundome parking lot. And there are many times I see the coaching staffs. I've seen him walk in as early as I get in, or at least he was coming back from something to get into the arena practicing. I didn't meet, but I was nearby and set up stuff with him. He was very, very fiery, very motivated, very driven. He clearly did not have the same expectations that the rest of the world, the USF, just be like a bottom feeder in the American Conference. I remember him saying, this is not the same old South Florida.
Yeah,
this is a team that can win. They did in his first year, and it's more than that. I can tell, when I was, work some games and just seeing players and that the players really bought in quickly to what he was, not only as a coach but as a person. And that's the thing I think about in these things. He had, I believe it was 3 children, his wife, and again, 43 years old, far too young. But in that short time, not only of his life but the USF, he made a tremendous impact. No, it goes beyond what he did on the hardwood and on the scoreboard. He was a fantastic person, and it goes from him at USF to when he was at Kennesaw State. He made those programs believe that they could win, and that's something more than any thing on the scoreboard can tell you, is that he was totally passionate and driven about his job. And it's very, very tough. I am very grateful to at least have been in the presence of him and to see him coach. And it's beyond tragedy. I have not, when it happened, I'm not on campus since the news broke. But from what I know is that there are things going on around USF to have a celebration of life for him. I don't That's what the Sun don't rely. But I do know there is USF is most likely doing something to honor
Yeah, and it's just tough, and I like you said, we feel for his family, his wife and his kids and all his friends and all his other relatives, and you know he had such a huge effect on so many people, and the outpouring of support from all over the country, from different programs, from different levels of professional sports. Were like, the Lightning did a memorial for him for a moment of silence at the game last night, and he just had such a huge effect in only about a year and a half time in the community. And it speaks volumes to the man he was, and he'll be missed. Rest easy, coach. Okay. So with that, let's move into the show. This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. Ian Gibson, you are my co-host tonight with the usual, like we do. So let's jump into this. So this is Week 9 recap. We had a couple of games on Thursday and Friday, and one of the games was Syracuse Pitt. In this Syracuse Pitt game, Kyle McCord imploded. I'm talking about probably one of the bigger implosions I've ever seen. He had 3 pick sixes, and the game was 31 nothing, like almost immediately. And this game was over. Like, Pitt didn't even have to do anything, and they were like destroying them. I mean, McCord ended up with 5 interceptions. That's how bad it was. And Pitt only had 217 yards of offense. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, real quick, you were not off that. Pitt literally did nothing. Those pick sixes were absolute daggers, and the 5 interceptions giving the ball away. Syracuse technically, like, they outgained Pitt by 100 yards, and they dominated them in time of possession. But when you keep giving the ball away, it doesn't matter. It's exactly what it was. Really, really, really rough performance by McCord. And once it got to it, I mean, they had no choice. They had to keep throwing it. It was so off. It was a death sentence, really.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on because we're going to be quick today. UNLV, Boise State. It was a very close game. It was back and forth at the end. Boise scored late to go up 29-24, and that was the ending score. This go-go offense with UNLV looked really good. Malik Williams, the quarterback for UNLV, had a pretty decent game. He had like 284 yards total and 3 TDs. But Ashton Genty still looked really good. He didn't have a ton of yards. He had 128, which is still really good. It's just his typical output is around like 200 or so. So, this was Genty's hardest game the rest of the year, and Boise State's as well. So, there's a chance that if Genty puts up another huge round in the next couple of games, that he has a good shot at the Heisman. But this, didn't deter it. Like, this was a big game, and he still performed fairly well. Boise gets the win, and they have, like I said, an easy road after this. They have Nevada, San Diego State, San Jose State, Wyoming. Oregon State will be tough. Maybe even the San Diego State game might be tough. Let me see what San Diego State is. San Diego State. Yeah, San Diego State is 3-4, so I guess it's not that tough of a game. But either way, Boise State looks like they'll get to the Mountain West championship game, and maybe UNLV will get there. We'll see. But your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, UNLV probably had their best game, at least for an opponent at the same caliber of Boise State. They targeted one game, made sure those holes were plugged, and made sure Genchi didn't have enough room to really explode out in the backfield.
But even with that, there was only so much they could. Genchi still had, like you said, over 100 yards and a touchdown, which is really saying how good you are when we say that's not a really good performance. But all in all, Boise State was able to win on the passing game as well. And that was what it really came down to, is that Boise State could both run and pass in times of need, and UNLV can only rely on Williams to do both.
Okay, next game we had. I actually went to this game because it is just a metro ride away, which I love, because I literally spent $3.50 on my metro ride to the stadium. I spent $11 on a ticket. I bought a chicken salad sandwich for $4.99, and then bought like a 6-pack of beer for like $10.99. So, and I did buy some stuff at the stadium, which I didn't have to, but I just was like, whatever. But like, that's all it really cost me to really go to this game. And it was, with that
game day on a budget.
Yeah. I'm like, honestly, like you can go to these, like, that's what's so great about living in LA, is that I'm close to both USC and UCLA, that I can go to Division I games for a decent price. And, this is the second largest media market in the country, and you're not breaking the bank to be able to do it. And I had a blast. I went with my wife's friends. They tailgate all the time. One of them, Darlene, she works at the school at USC, and they've been tailgating for years. My wife's friend's mom has been going to the games for like since 2006, so she's been around. She's an OG, and she goes to like every game. And yeah, it was fun. The game was not really close because USC was up like 21-3 relatively quickly, and then they just kept outpacing them the entire time. It did get closer in the third. Rutgers scored entering the third and made it a 28-20 game, but then USC answered with 2 more scores, and then it was 42-20 the rest of the way. And Miller Moss was adequate. He wasn't like amazing in the game, but he still had 308 yards, which was pretty damn good. I just think the what really was moving the ball was Jaquavius Marks. He had a great game, and he had 3 TDs, and I think that was like the difference in the game. I think because the run game was so effective, Miller Moss was able to take advantage of some things. There was quite a few plays in the passing attack that resulted in explosive plays, 20 plus. And, that was a difference in the game as well. Rutgers wasn't bad. They just weren't good enough. And, I don't know, this USC team, we'll see where they go from here. But a good win and good way to end the losing streak. Ian, your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is, like, if you had to drive to this game on this day with the Dodgers game, the Lakers game, and the concerts, you deserve like a freaking medal
for having to go through that traffic. Regardless of that, USC's offense came out and they really shook off the rust there. And when you play an opponent like Rutgers, you really to. The one thing I do want to say is that USC did give up very long same time. While they did hold Rutgers to some field goals and some positions, they still gave up over 400 yards. So that was the one thing that I was disappointed in, is that the defense still needs to improve.
Yeah, for sure. That the traffic was terrible. We heard that, I was watching the Dodger game as we were at the USC game, and Freddie Freeman hit that grand slam, and I think I was like the first one around me to react, and like everyone started going crazy after that, and it like spread all through the stadium. It was pretty amazing, pretty cool to experience that. Okay, next game we've got is Nebraska, Ohio State on Saturday. This is a close game. Nebraska took a lead late, and Ohio State had to score with not much time left to be able to try to win this one off. And, it's funny because it was like the week before Indiana smoked this Nebraska team, and Ohio State really struggled to do anything offensively against them. And, they had a couple of big plays. There was a big play to Smith and then a big pass play to, I think a Buku, or I can't remember who, but, Will Howard did not look amazing in this. He only was 13 of 16, which is not a ton of yards. Not a ton of passing, and it was 221 total yardage. No, it wasn't a Buku. It was Carnell Tate. Sorry. Yeah. It was Carnell Tate with a touchdown, and then Jeremiah Smith with a long one. And then Quinshon Judkins had one as well. Howard had 3 TDs, but it was like limited because Nebraska was, playing them tough. Their defensive line was getting in the backfield and getting after Howard. Rayola didn't look great either. He was 21 of 32 for 152 yards. I don't know. I'm not like – I was high on Nebraska at first. I was hoping they were going to get to this game with like 1 loss or maybe no losses, and they weren't able to do that, and now they have 3 losses. But it's not the end of the world because they haven't been to a bowl game in 7 years. So if they win one more game, which I feel like they will, they'll go bowling, which would be a huge accomplishment for this team, considering how bad they had been the last 7-8 years. And, I think they can do it. Ohio State, their gauntlet starts now. They got Penn State next week. They got Michigan and Indiana coming up. So, they're going to have to really step it up to try to close out these games and get to the Big 12 or Big 10 championship. And regardless, I feel like they still are probably a playoff team no matter what happens the rest of their season. But I don't know. I'm not overly impressed with them after this game. And like I said, their schedule just gets way more difficult in the next couple of weeks. But Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was afraid of for Ohio State because they were coming off a loss and the bye week. And Nebraska was just coming off a blowout loss as well. And they usually, play up to that. And Ohio State was just sleepwalking. And that was a game, again, time to wow, Nebraska just can't have the firepower that Ohio State has right now. But they won out in the end, but they cannot play this game or they're just, sleepwalking, having these, quick little dump routes and, runs up the middle. They have to be more creative. Because now they play Penn State this next week, and then in a few weeks they're going to play Indiana. So it is definitely not going to be smooth sailing from here, and they cannot have another repeat performance because if they do, it's going to end up like the Oregon
game. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Notre Dame Navy. Notre Dame rolls over Navy pretty easily. It was 14-7 early, and then just Notre Dame had like 37-14 outscored them through that after that 14-7 point, actually 37-7. So, Notre Dame's offense looked really good. What really was their defense really showed out because Navy's offense has been really good the last all season. And, Notre Dame was able to keep them to 310 total yards. And they were under their rushing average. They held Navy under their rushing average, 222. And then Notre Dame went off when the run game, 265. Riley Leonard, he's not like, I don't know, passing numbers. He's not going to put up huge numbers week in, week out, but he's effective on the ground and effective enough in the pass game to keep them honest. Yeah, because he had 83 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Jeremiah Love for them looked really good. This Notre Dame team, I know the Northern Illinois loss was like, oh, this is terrible. And it's like, what are they going to do? But they already have beaten Texas A&M in the beginning of the year in College Station, and that win looks better and better as the season has gone on, because Texas A&M hasn't lost since then. And Notre Dame just has to win out. They have tough games against Army, and that USC game now looks more and more pesky. So it'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think even if they get a second loss, they'd probably get in, because now it's a 12-team playoff. I don't see why the playoff committee would ever deny Notre Dame, because they have a reason to put them in, because it's like, oh, there's plenty of spaces. Now they can just make a reason to be like, to put them in. So it's more than likely, Notre Dame gets in a 12-team playoff pretty consistently, even with 2 losses, maybe even 3, depending on their schedule and the year of what the schedule looks like. Your thoughts before we move on?
The key of this game was that Notre Dame was able to force the 6 turnovers of Navy, which is really surprising in a game with a team like Navy. But with that, they were just rolling downhill on Navy, and Navy just couldn't keep up. As limiting the running attack and
rushing attempts was huge, and Notre Dame just was able to run all over that man in the time of possession and capitalize on those turnovers.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to Washington, Indiana. Cignetti is just, backup QB, defending, or the runner-up from last year's national championship game, and it doesn't matter, and he still wins by double digits. And this team is rolling right now. Rourke didn't play, but Taven Jackson came in and did good enough. He didn't have to do amazing. He just had to really be able to get the run game going, in which they did in the second half. And, they were ahead enough to where Washington really didn't challenge after the first half. And, this defense looks really good. The offense is good, especially with Rourke. Who knows if he'll be back next week or not. But this schedule for Indiana, they have Ohio State and they have Michigan left that are really tough teams. Michigan State and Purdue should be pretty easy for them. So we will see. I mean, I honestly feel like if they go 1-1 in the Michigan-Ohio State games, they'll be 11-1, and I think they'll get into the Big Ten championship game. And, that would be crazy to see a team like Indiana go from, a perennial, nothing to now, potentially on the doorstep of the playoffs. It's remarkable. But Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, at least with Rourke, they said it wasn't a major injury. They were able to, it was a thumb injury, and they said he should be ready for the week. It was a precautionary thing because it was a fresh procedure. But the good thing is with Jackson is that it was his 6th start already, and at that point, you're kind of more in the zone with that offense. You know how it runs. But they, came out firing. They were up, I believe, 17-7 at one point. And when Washington made it close, they were able to respond and put enough distance where they couldn't, catch up. I didn't say, they weren't going to score 40 points. I was kind of right there, but I knew Indiana would score. Like I said, the offense did enough to win, and the offense is as efficient as they are right now. It's not too difficult to insert a quarterback in this position and have the other playmakers help out.
Yeah. It's crazy with this team because it's like, man, they came out of nowhere. And I know the first game that I noticed them was that UCLA game, which was the second game of the year. And now it's Indiana is totally, and everyone noticed it because they were on College Game Day. The week before they were at, the Big Noon was there. So, they're definitely, everyone is taking notice, and it's quite remarkable. Okay, next game we had Oklahoma, Ole Miss. Ole Miss you know, I don't know what to make of it because it was kind of like, you know, Oklahoma had a lead at half, and Ole Miss just kind of was not really doing much, and they then, outscore them in the second half 16-0 and win 26-14. But it's just like, this Oklahoma team is very limited. They're missing 5 of their top receivers, and Arnold, I'm just not impressed with. He didn't have a good game. He did have two TDs, but he only threw 182 yards and just looked lost at a lot of times. Jackson Dart looked good, but they just, I don't know. I know this Oklahoma team's defense isn't terrible, which I'll say that, it's definitely like a decent defense, but their offense is so putrid. I'm amazed that they even put up 14 just because Ole Miss is a way better team right now than Oklahoma. But, Ole Miss still wins. If they keep winning, they have a shot at getting to the playoff. It's not out of the realm of possibility. They have Georgia, Arkansas, and Florida coming up. So those are tough games. Those are not guarantee wins. This Arkansas team, can score, and Green looks really good. And obviously Georgia's Georgia, and Florida, who knows? I mean, they seem to be turning a corner. But this Ole Miss team's got to keep winning because they already have those 2 losses. And especially with that one to Kentucky, looks worse every week. So got to get better and got to keep beating these teams. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head that Ole Miss needs to start, showing better because Oklahoma is just kind of a mess right now. Arnold came back in at starting. They're missing the wide receivers, but still that's scary. Ole Miss, again, this is a thing where you just have a better team. And while they got the win, it wasn't a very pretty win. And that's something that's going to have to be looked on for the rest of the week. They haven't really had a good looking win since they lost to Kentucky. And they did beat South Carolina 27-3, but then they lost to LSU, and they haven't crossed the 30-point mark since that game against Georgia Southern, which was the week before Kentucky. So that's something offensively they're going to need to tighten up because, like you said, the schedule only gets tougher.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to Missouri, Alabama. This game was never close. Milroe looked really good, and Missouri is a fraud. Before the season, people pointed out, okay, they have a couple of games. They have Texas A&M, they have Alabama, and they have Oklahoma. And the rest of their games are really easy, and they should win those. And it's if they go 1-2, 2-1 in those games, they'll likely get in the playoff. And then in both of the 2 games so far of their tough ones, they scored a total of 17 points between the 2 games and got outscored 70-17. I don't know. I mean, you cannot put this team in the playoff. You literally cannot, because they're not challenging anyone with a pulse. I mean, South Carolina put up a fight against this Alabama team. And, is South Carolina that much better than Missouri? I don't know. I mean, South Carolina's not going to the playoff. But Missouri, the only reason they are where they are is because their schedule is Charmin soft. And it's not fair to the rest of these other teams that this team gets to waltz to 10 wins, depending on what happens in the Oklahoma game. And, I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see them, making the playoff as of now. They'd have to destroy Oklahoma and then really destroy the rest of these teams. And even then it would be hard pressed to put them in. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah. And when you think about it, they came very close to losing to Vandy. But but the teams they have played that have been kind of more caliber, it's been they got the win against Boston College, but other than that, it's not been a good look. And then you play a team like Alabama, who has really
been spiraling, and they came out and they did kind of expose Missouri. Now they did have time instead of Cook, so it wasn't easy for any through 3 interceptions, and Alabama was able to take advantage of that. But it really showed the discrepancy between Alabama and Missouri, and that Missouri is still nowhere near like SEC elite level.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Their quarterback had 42 yards and 3 interceptions. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, next game, BYU UCF. BYU was in control of this game, and UCF gets 2 late TDs. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. BYU looks really good. They probably could have beat them by more, but they kind of like packed it in late in the game. And they win 37-24. Your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, this is just a thing where UCF or BYU is better than UCF. And for UCF, that's 5 in a row. Now they got to play Arizona, maybe win there, but it's definitely been, once these teams have been tougher, they haven't been able to play up to them. And they have really no offensive game plan right now.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just not good enough. They're not good enough anymore. Okay, next game, Illinois, Oregon. And this is another blowout. There's 3 of these in a row that are kind of blowouts. Oregon wins 38-9. This game was never close. It was 35-3 at halftime, and Oregon really just kind of coasted and, took it easy on them. But Dylan Gabriel still had 291 yards and 3 TDs. Dylan Gabriel right now, okay, because he's slowly creeping into the Heisman race, and he is the quarterback of the number 1 undefeated team in the country, and that goes a long way usually. And it hasn't really been like out in the forefront yet, but I feel like as we go further into the season, Oregon looks really damn good, and they're showing out in these games. They have tough games the next couple weeks, Michigan and Wisconsin. And depending on how this Washington fares, maybe that game will be tough. But then a Big Ten championship game is likely at this point. And so he has some opportunities to show out in the next couple of weeks. And, you never know with this team, honestly, for Oregon and Dylan Gabriel getting the Heisman stuff. But regardless, they are the number 1 team in the country. They look better and better. They look like the best team in the country. And, it's crazy because it's like Oregon was definitely hyped up in the beginning of the year, and a lot of people were thinking highly of them. And then they played well against Ohio State, and they've just handled business in the last couple of weeks, and they looked really good, and they look poised to really take it to the next level. And it's interesting to see because I think a lot of people were like more towards the Ohio State, Georgia as the best team in the country, and Texas, and now Oregon is like, taking the helm. So your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and that's what you said. Is Oregon looked like the number 1 team yesterday. They certainly have every right to be right now.
Gabriel, almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Oregon's offensive line has been all to make those receivers have. So big credit to them. They might have one of the best offensive lines in the country. But Illinois didn't play terrible. It's just, this is one thing where like it's the number 1 team in the country, and they were proving it yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next game we've got. I picked 2 upsets and they both failed, but this one was the closer of the 2 that I picked. Texas Vanderbilt. This game was really close. Vanderbilt took an early 7-0 lead. Texas came back, scored 2 straight touchdowns. They scored another one. They were up 21-7. Vandy got a late field goal at half, 21-10. Ewers had a couple picks. They weren't really his fault. They were off deflections. Vandy gets a TD. They get 24-17. The next interception he had led to a field goal. Texas got an interception from Pavia. So it was 27-17. And then, Pavia's looked great all year. He's really been impressive. I like the way he plays, especially in these big games. He's looked really amazing. And in thinking about it, it's like if he had decent talent around him, how good he would be. That, I don't know if he still has any eligibility left, but if he does, can you imagine the offers he's going to be getting from teams?
Yeah.
Any team that is decent, that has pretty good talent, is going to be and they need a quarterback. They're going to be throwing everything at this kid to get him. But then what is it? Vandy scores a late touchdown, makes it 27-24. Onside kick fails, and that was it. But great game. It was close throughout most of it, and Vanderbilt was this close again. They're very pesky, and crazy things would have happened if they won this game, because really it would have been, like you said, the LSU game would have determined who goes to the SEC championship game. So craziness, but great season for Vanderbilt so far. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and with Vandy, I'm not a big person in moral victories. I don't believe in them, but I don't really think you can knock them out of the top 25, because that Texas was number one. They are still one of the best teams in the country, and they didn't even play bad. They had Ewers threw the 2 picks, and I'm going to put picks in very loose quotations because, like you said, they were deflected. Swear to God, there needs to be a stat that says unforced interceptions, because they weren't really on him. But yeah, Vandy was with them the whole time. That really is a credit to Vanderbilt and how well they've been this year. All of their losses have been by at least one score. Their worst loss point-wise was actually against Georgia State, and that was against and that was by 4 points. But Texas, they were able to at least limit the running ability of Pavia and really box him in and make him fill those passes. Those picks were not as pretty, but they were really forced in trying to get something going. But this is, again, the thing where Texas had the game plan to really box in Vanderbilt and not fall into that trap that, it seems like Alabama or Kentucky, that Vanderbilt game they want you to play. Vandy was playing a Texas game, and when that happens, Texas, they made a good fight out of it at the end, but after that onside kick, there was no chance.
Yeah. Okay. Quick on this one. FSU, Miami, whatever. It actually was closer than I thought when it was 23-7 into the fourth quarter, but Miami scores 2 late scores, and Florida State gets a late one as well. So Cam Warren didn't look great, but they ran the ball extremely well. Damian Martinez had a great game. Your thoughts, and then we'll move on.
It's kicking a dead horse, man. The rushing defense of Florida State has been really bad, so they just focused on that and they exploited it. So
as easy of a rivalry win as you can get for Miami.
Yeah. Okay. This game, the score looked, kind of like it was too out of hand, but it was a close game for most of it. And actually LSU was ahead 17-7 at half. And LSU looked like it was going to roll easily to a win, but Texas A&M, I don't know what happened to Wigman. I didn't see, but he didn't finish this game. And Reed comes in, and Reed looked great. He only had 2 passes, but he was, marshaling the running attack, and they were able to move the ball with Reed behind center. And, they scored 31 points in the second half to LSU's 6. So 31-6, that's pretty significant in outpacing them. And, this A&M team, The defense looks really good. I'm going to say that because Elko knows what he's doing defensively. He brought in, the coaches from Florida and some of their players and some of the defensive players from elsewhere, and they looked really good. Honestly, I know Nussmeier still had a really good game, but he had 3 interceptions, which was crucial, and he threw it 50 times, which is kind of ridiculous. But they held him to 24 rushing yards. I don't know. This A&M team, 1 loss to Notre Dame. They have a really good shot at getting to the SEC championship game at this point because their only tough game left is really Texas. I mean, look out for this A&M team. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and when Marcel Reed came in, it completely changed the dynamic of LSU's attack on the offense because now they had to run more on the run game on the pass. So it was a completely different philosophy that they were, preparing for. So all in all, in Texas A&M, that was a great decision to put Reed in. But for LSU, it's another game where it's close, and they just give up the most time or turnovers in this case, and they just can't find a way to win these really tough games. The last time I remember LSU winning a really close tough game was against Bama 2 years ago, and that was Kelly's first year. But USC game this year, Florida State last year, the year before that, and this one as well. They just really struggle in these types of games.
Well, I mean, they beat Ole Miss this year, and that was a close game.
True. That's true. That was okay. Yeah, that's true.
Like you said, it's very few and far between. He's not winning these close games. Okay. The second part of my upset picks, and I was wrong on Penn State, Wisconsin. Penn State wins 28-13. This game was 10-7 at half, and Wisconsin was looking to, kind of continue their game plan of just not, doing anything crazy and avoid mistakes. And then the worst thing possible, their quarterback throws a pick six right to the linebacker. And, that was the difference in the game because that gave Penn State the momentum. They score that one. It was 13-10 at that point. And then they scored another one right after that and then got another one later. And Drew Alar was hurt. And the guy that came in, let's see, I can't remember his name,
it was
Prabula. Yeah, Prabula. And he actually did fairly well. And the funny thing is, I actually liked him. I like his playing style more than I like Alar because Alar is not very athletic. And Prabula is 1, athletic, and then 2, not afraid to take on hits, which is not a great thing because you can get hurt as a quarterback. But he looked really good. He made plays with his legs. Nick Singleton had a decent game, had a touchdown and a couple of catches. And then Katron Allen looked really good. They're still undefeated. This Penn State team has a lot to play for. They have 5 games left. So Penn State goes up against Ohio State next week. They have a tough one against Washington. And then besides that, the rest of them are easy. Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland, they should smoke those teams. So literally the next 2 weeks is it. If they beat Ohio State, then they have a really good shot at going undefeated, and then they'll have to play in the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. But we'll see. I mean, I'm still not sold on them offensively, but this is a big win. And this Wisconsin team came ready to play. They just couldn't get the win. And, hats off to Penn State. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, with Penn State, it was a typical Big Ten defensive battle. And in that instance, Penn State was prepared for that one. And they had enough offense to complement it. And Wisconsin is just all defense, and they couldn't do as much as Penn State could. So in that instance, Penn State still at the top of winning these Big Ten type games. And we're going to see with Ohio State how well they play against a really elite offense next week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because this Ohio State team, I don't know. I mean, the trend doesn't look great. The loss to Oregon and then not looking that great against Nebraska, but maybe they'll get up for this Penn State game. I mean, Penn State has rarely beaten Ohio State in the last like 10 years with Franklin. So we'll see. Okay, moving on to the last two. Kansas State, close game. Kansas State has to score a late field goal just to go ahead, and they get the win 29-27. Avery Johnson continuing to look really good. I really like this kid. I think he, is super athletic and has a really good command of the offense. And DJ Giddens as well, the running back for Kansas State, looks really good. Jalen Daniels did not look bad in this game. He did enough to help this team win, but this Kansas team just seems like there is not the same magic that they've had the last couple of years. And, they got snake bitten again. They've had a lot of close losses and they lose again. So hats off to Kansas State. They have, won these tough games outside of the BYU game. Very balanced, 253 in the air, 226 on the ground. Their defense is solid, forced 2 turnovers. And, this team is good, man. And I really expect Kansas State to have a really good chance of getting into the playoff regardless of the outcome of the Big 12 championship game. And they have Houston, Arizona State, Cincinnati. They should win those 3 games. And then the last week, which is against Iowa State, that'll be a huge game because that will determine who goes to the Big 12 championship game. And that, I hope they both win out to get to that, because that would be an amazing game to finish out the regular season. Your thoughts, Ian, before we move on?
Yeah, just real quick. It's a very, expected Big 12 rivalry game. Both teams are going back and forth. But again, Kansas State has been in these instances and they were able to force the big turnovers and capitalize on it. It's kind of K-State's motto. And they were able to win in a close one. Typical Big 12 rivalry game here.
Okay, last one, and then we'll end the show. SMU Duke. SMU was up 21-7. Looked like they were going to roll in this one late in the third quarter. Duke comes back and ties it. A fumble by SMU late leads to a good field position for Duke. And Duke looks like it's a seemingly easy kick to win, and they get the kick blocked. And then they goes to overtime. SMU scores quick. They go up 28-21. Murphy for Duke throws a nice touchdown pass to put them up, or to put a score up. So it's 28-27. They go for 2, and they don't convert. And so SMU wins. And it was such a great, exciting finish. I'm glad I caught the end of that. SMU, man, I'm telling you, this is like, I don't think people even realize that they're one of the better teams in the ACC. They're not getting a lot of publicity because they're a 7-1 team, and for some reason they're the 22nd ranked team. They play Pitt next week, and the rest of their games they should win out. Boston College, Virginia, Cal. But yeah, the game against Pitt will probably determine if they or Pitt have a shot at getting to the ACC championship game. But great start so far for the coach. What is his name? Rhett Lashley. And we'll see what they do. But close game, and Duke, last couple of weeks have lost these close ones. Really kind of sucks for them. But your thoughts, Ian, and we'll close it out.
Yeah, for SMU, they're very lucky because that, really ball down that field goal, and they're able to do a good job of stopping the 2-point conversion. Not going to get on Duke for, wanting to go for the win. But SMU totally put their foot off the gas pedal and let Duke back into this one. And as I've always said, you cannot repeat that down the road because you won't get bit.
Okay. All right. That is the show. Like we said, we're on Sunday and Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Catch us at haterradio.com for all of our articles. for our social media, for X, Twitter, Instagram Threads, TikTok. It is at hater_radio. For Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB. And for YouTube, it is at Hater Radio. Ian, what are your socials before we go?
Yeah, at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, it's at _Hater_G.
And then check out that article that Voyage LA put out about us. Shout out to them for the article as well. You can check it out on voyagela.com, and it's either on the homepage or if you type in like their search on their page, Hater Radio, it comes right up. But that's the show. Have a good one, and we'll see you guys later.